And we're back with our continued coverage of the criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs. I'm not alone. I'm here with Elizabeth Millner, Law&Crime's in-court reporter, who's been there for every moment of the action through all the testimony of Jane today being cross-examined by the defense. Elizabeth, so good to see you. To start it off, let me give you a great comment. We got a viewer question from Sam. I just want you to know I've been watching every day from Oxford, England, 5:30 p.m. my time. I'm glued to these updates, and Elizabeth is absolutely beautiful inside and out. Elizabeth, you get so much love on here from our viewers, so always good to see. I do have a lot of questions for you from viewers. Usually I'll ask you to tell us everything that happened, but I got to get to these viewer questions. I'm going to list three because they're basically the same question. This is from L. Spelunker. This is a question for Elizabeth. There's been a lot of rumors and speculation, jurors and people being removed, about what is going on in the courtroom today. What is actually going on? That's my question. Another question from Anne. Is it true about a juror being asked to leave? If so, did it cause a delay in the court? And then Show and Tell Knitting asks, what's the issue with juror number 6? So they're kind of related questions. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it does seem like it's kind of all pertaining to the same issue. So it kind of first started yesterday, and that's when the judge had ordered kind of the lead counsel on both sides, both the prosecution and the defense, to kind of have a conversation with him inside the judge's chamber. But what was interesting is that this particular conversation wasn't even in the transcripts. It was under seal, and we learned a little bit more, not the full answer as to what they were talking about. The government is still going to be submitting a response. But from what I understand just about the conversation, there is a possible issue with juror number 6. Now, as far as what the issue may be, it's not very clear. But what I will say is even yesterday and even today, we've seen every single one of the jurors, including the alternates, being inside the jury box, still listening to the testimony. So it's unclear kind of what the hiccup is, but I feel like by at least tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon, because court is starting a little bit later tomorrow, that we should learn a little bit more and at least learn what the government's response is to this. But as far as we know right now, everything is kept under wraps, tight-lipped, and under seal, unfortunately.
So no one's being kicked out of the court today?
Nope. Not from what I saw. It might be a different situation in the media overflow room, but from what I saw in the main courtroom, I didn't see anyone get kicked out.
Okay, we got a question from Jane. No, not the Jane, just a Jane. What's the well, we hope not Jane. What's the atmosphere like in the court today?
Yeah, the atmosphere is pretty interesting. I thought as far as the cross-examination, I didn't know kind of what to expect as far as where the cross-examination would go. Tenny Garagos is the one doing the questioning for Jane Doe while she's on the stand. But as far as just the atmosphere inside the courtroom, you would think it would be kind of tense. This is alleged victim number 2. She's testifying under cross-examination. But from what how the testimony is going so far inside the courtroom, you would think, and I think this is kind of pretty interesting for our viewers, is that Tenny and Jane, while she's on the stand, it seems like the two are just like friends catching up. And the two are just, when Tenny would throw a question to her, oh, so you mean that this is happening? Oh, so did you really mean that you didn't want to do these hotel nights, but you did want to do this because you wanted to please your partner, your lover? It's very kind of toned down. It's not aggressive like we've seen in other cross-examinations with Brian Steele and Mia, or even with Nicole Westmoreland and Bonna, but really with Tenny Garagos. And I think, I got to commend her on that, is that the cross-examination is not aggressive as far as this morning has gone. And so you would think that the atmosphere would be a little bit tense. And even as far as Diddy's demeanor inside the courtroom today, you would also think that it might be a little tense. He is a little animated at some points as far as just kind of looking either at Jane, looking at Tenny Garagos, jotting some notes down here and there, but he's not looking over at the jurors from what I could see. But you would think it'd be kind of again, that tense environment, but so far it hasn't been. It seems like Jane is still kind of holding up. She hasn't broke down in tears. She hasn't gotten emotional just yet, or not even just yet. She hasn't gotten emotional so far during the cross-examination, and so that's pretty much the atmosphere as far as today goes.
We got a super chat question from Carol Mogan. Thank you so much, Carol. Elizabeth, thank you for your most informative updates. I don't know how you keep up. How do you keep up, Elizabeth?
I don't know how I keep up, honestly.
Elizabeth's like, I don't know how I keep up. I'm having a mental breakdown. I'm having a mental breakdown. I'm fine. Everything's okay.
I mean, I'm okay. You know, I'm celebrating my birthday with you guys as opposed to being at home doing something else.
Oh, happy birthday, Elizabeth! Happy birthday.
So.
Well, you're greatly you're great. You're widely respected, so highly valued. Everybody loves what you're doing. Okay, so we have more questions for you coming in, and you answered a little bit more about the reaction of the jurors and Diddy. That was a question from Olivia E. You know, how is the cross-examination as intense as previous ones? How does Jane seem to be reacting? You answered that. This is a question from Enlin DK. Love the reaction of my silly question, girls supporting girls. How did Tenny react when Jane told her not to call her child son? There was a little bit of a tense back and forth there about the father of her child and her child. What was going on there?
Yeah, it seemed that Jane really kind of took offense to Tenny Garagos, and Tenny kind of apologized for this, where she did kind of blurt out your son, and then Jane was kind of like, when you reference my child, can you specifically say my child? And so it seems like this is definitely a touching point when it comes to Jane being on the stand, and even just as far as just kind of the outside noise too, where she seems very kind of protective over the relationship, either with her son specific or her child specifically, or even her child's father, where she was kind of asked a certain question as far as why she moved from the East Coast over to LA. Was she over in the East Coast because she wanted to be near her child's father? And Jane was kind of like, okay, well, what does that have to do with this? And this being obviously the criminal case against Diddy. But it seems like, as far as mentioning just whether or not Jane's child is either a daughter or a son, when Tenny kind of spilt that it was the son or her son, that Jane kind of took a little bit of offense to it, and then Tenny apologized a couple of times, and so they kind of moved past it, and it seems like everything is still kind of going pretty well so far.
By the way, everybody in the chat is wishing you a happy birthday, just so you know. This is a question from Mikey John. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. This is for Elizabeth. Greetings from Germany. Is there information on who's coming to the stand after Jane?
Yeah, that is the big question, because a lot of people are under the presumption or assumption that, you know, the prosecution may rest. I personally don't believe we've gotten there so far. I think maybe at least we might have one or two witnesses afterwards. But I think since Jane is taking most of the duration of this week, and at least she'll be on the stand up until Thursday because she has to catch a flight Thursday evening, that we don't know just yet who they're going to be calling next to the stand. But I'm hoping that they'll at least kind of spill the tea a little bit this afternoon before we adjourn for the day. So we should find out very soon.
Because the witness list is sealed, and we really don't get an idea of who's testifying until the end of the day when there's some sort of clues, and we do wonder whether or not Christina Coram will testify for the prosecution. We anticipate that she would. These are two questions that are very similar for you, Elizabeth. This is from RSS. What's the latest update on the mistrial due to Brianna's testimony? And this is also from Blessing Eek. Has the prosecution responded to the defense's request for a mistrial, and what was the judge's ruling? I remember this is all about, they make the claim that she provided false testimony, that she perjured herself about the balcony incident. I think they also made the same allegation about Mia, that she wasn't telling the truth on the stand. They said that this is, biased the jury, prejudiced Sean Combs. What do we know about the latest on that, if anything?
So the judge spoke about it this morning before the jury was brought in, before the witness, Jane, was brought in back to the witness stand. And the judge ruled that the motion was denied because he believes that there was no interference that happened. He was saying that the defense was able to undermine that this alleged incident, that being the balcony incident on the 17th story over at Cassie's condo, that they were able to undermine this alleged incident with the hotel receipt, and that being the receipt that showed that Sean Combs was over in New York during the time that this allegedly happened. And the judge said that this isn't fodder for a mistrial, and that the defense can use exhibits to undermine both Bonna's testimony, Cassie's testimony, and in some respects even Mia's testimony too. But the defense said, okay, well, we didn't know what Bonna was going to say, and then the government, even in their response, wasn't talking specifically about the hotel receipt. And then the judge said, well, Nicole Westmoreland really had a Perry Mason moment during her cross-examination, and that's not grounds for a mistrial, because she did have a very effective cross, Nicole Westmoreland did, when Bonna was on the stand. And the defense said, well, Cassie said she saw it. There's There's nothing in the text that says she saw it, because they were talking about the exhibits where Cassie texted after the fact, just being like to Christina Coram, oh, hey, I just heard that this crazy stuff had happened, and that being the alleged dangling of Bonna over at the top of her condo. And then the defense says that they kind of want to do a nahu or a napu instruction, that Bonna's testimony was perjured. And the government said that Bonna's testimony wasn't perjured. She just could have been confused that the metadata, because we saw the metadata that showed that the photo in question was taken on September 26th. And the government was like, okay, well, maybe this metadata could have been wrong in this instance, because they say sometimes that could happen. But the judge said, well, isn't the innocent explanation to all of this was that this was 9 years ago. Bonna was in her early 20s at this point, that around this time she was taking drugs, and that this photo could have been taken earlier. It could have been taken later, and that the defense already attacked the timing of this incident during their cross-examination. And the defense said, and Alexandra Shapiro is making these arguments on behalf of the defense, where she was saying that the government still isn't bringing up the hotel receipt, and that Bonna has motivation to lie because of her civil claims against Sean Combs. And the judge said, okay, well, you can submit your proposed instruction, and that being the nahu or the napu instruction. And the defense said, okay, absolutely. And so despite even the judge's ruling, the defense says that they're still going to submit their instruction, so that way the jury can know once it comes time for those moments that this may have allegedly been perjured testimony.
Yeah, it's not poo. It's basically when the Supreme Court held that a prosecutor has to correct the record, has to correct a materially false impression that comes from testimony. It could violate due process, whether it was intentional or not. Real quick, I know we have to let you go. I just want to ask you, is his family in court today, Sean Combs?
Yeah. Yep. So it's a decent family present, I should say. So his mother Janice is there, his sister Keisha is there, his sons Justin and Christian are there. The mother of his youngest child, Love, is there, and surprisingly, we are wearing the same dress today, just in different colors. We chatted about it in the elevator. She was super nice. But as far as just support on Diddy's side, he does seem to be having a support system there. And also, another big name is inside that courtroom, and that being Mark Garrigo. So maybe he's there today to really see his daughter Tinny in action while she's giving the cross-examination. And so we do see kind of a fuller house on the defensive side, absolutely, today.
All right, Elizabeth Millner, happy birthday. I know you have to head back into court. Thank you so much for the great reporting as always. And I will see you later on our daily sidebar recap of everything that happened in court today. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Oh, you got it. Thanks, Jesse.
All right, let me continue on with our panel. We had a great question that came in. Okay, so this is a question for all three of my guests, Adante, Alexis, and Safa. Safa, I'll start with you. When you list the charges against Sean Combs, do you think he will beat them? Safa, start with you.
It's going to depend. I'm still not in the purview that the prosecution has met their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I think that the defense has raised some significant doubt and credibility issues with the witnesses. I think that the prosecution has made a somewhat better case on the sex trafficking aspect or charges. With respect to the RICO, I think that they are on their way. They've certainly established some predicate offenses that would be required to substantiate the RICO, but I think that they've still got some ways to go. And I personally think that as Jane Doe as Jane Doe is sitting here testifying today, I think that the defense is having some significant wins with respect to her credibility. So I don't think that this is a slam dunk case for the prosecution. I don't think that they've met their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt as of yet. So we'll see.
Adante, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, the defense has definitely made some points today. The prosecution, in my opinion, by putting this witness on the stand, Jane Doe, that is, I think it's hurt their case, the credibility of their case. And if the defense gets that instruction in where the judge is going to tell them, hey, the prosecutors have a duty and they may have placed a perjured testimony into the record, I think that significantly hampers the prosecution's credibility, which then is a benefit to the defense. As I said before, I think at this point, we're headed towards a mistrial on many of those charges, but the strongest perhaps being the sex trafficking, just because all that requires is money, movement of a person, and the intent to have sex, which...
That's the prostitution charge, not the sex trafficking one. The prostitution charge, that's the easiest one. You look at Jane's testimony alone, I think that was enough. I mean, I don't think the jury's going back and saying, these sexual episodes didn't happen. The defense isn't even arguing against that. It's, look, and I guess the question is, Alexis, how do they defeat that charge? You could say sex trafficking, is it actually non-consensual? Is it really force, fraud, coercion being used? Is there really a criminal enterprise for racketeering? But transportation to engage in prostitution, Jane's saying that she helped pay for these men to travel, paid them. There's cash being given. Cassie said the same thing about a worker being used in multiple different locations. She was having these freak-offs or these hotel nights, according to Jane, in multiple locations. I don't know how they fight against that one, Alexis.
I don't think they're going to win that one, but I disagree with my panel members. I do think that the prosecution has hit the elements of the charges, including the racketeering and also for the sex trafficking and the drug trafficking. Now, whether the jury is going to go and convict him is, in my opinion, the real question. I think we have a celebrity here, and just overall, jurors don't like to convict celebrities in general. So the prosecution has to overcome that. Then on top of that, we have this, confusion that happens with racketeering charges. Jurors generally don't really understand that, and that takes a lot of education. And then we have thrown into the mix this confusion that the defense is doing really well trying to convince the jury that this is just domestic violence.